The essence of the compounded echo step is that you don't just step with the lead foot, then the rear foot. The rear foot becomes like a driver for the next posture. So the rear foot isn't just a step, it becomes a much more dynamic set for the next posture. Probably the most obvious example of this in Yiquan is the fan step, and this is a really famous technique where you step forward with the lead foot, then you step out with the lead foot and do a rear hand technique. You often see it in a jab cross jab combination, for example, with the lead foot moving back in for the jab. That's a kind of bog standard exercise you'll see the Yao brothers teaching, for example. So I'll break this down in detail in this session, and first of all, as per usual, let's have a look and a listen to the rhythm, and think about, you can hear the rhythm, you can hear the rear foot set flat first and then hear it change into the pivot root, and you can feel the energy from the flat foot into the pivot root and how that sets the posture and creates this very dynamic of what Wang Shenjai called rebound energy. And you can see here it's much more advanced. It's bouncing from the flat-footed landing into the pivot root. That also adds some extra zing into the posture. And that transition point from the flat foot to the pivot root is precisely the point of the compound of the echo step. So have a listen first. So this is very different from the normal kind of step-in cross, like a pendulum cross where we land on the ball of the foot. Here we land on the flat of the foot. And we then need to use that energy of the landing to the flat-footed set to ping up into the pivot root. And that has to be timed perfectly with the hit point of the cross or whatever rear hand technique we're using. Now, as well as being timed with the punch, that's also got to be timed with the lead foot stepping out, and that's the actual fan step where it widens the posture to create more volume, and that stepping out of the lead foot has got to be timed exactly with the pivot root and the hit point. And you can see also that the lead foot lands flat, so unlike a seeking step where it's pointing forwards and ball of the foot lands, you still want to land so that the ball of the foot hits the floor, but the foot steps out sideways, as you can see there. You can see that it actually is the ball of the foot that hits the floor, even though it's moving sideways. And all of that combined with the Farley is adding volume into the posture. So the Farley is taking place over a very small space, but then the whole body is moving in space. Think about that old Einstein experiment where you sat on a bus and you throw a ball up in the air and catch it. It only covers a small amount of space to your perspective, but actually someone watching the bus go by, that ball's travelled a greater distance. It's very much the same principle. The Farley is small, but because we're moving the whole body, we're just creating more volume in space. And then the next thing, as ever, is cultivation. So refining it to get it as explosive as possible, as sharp, explosive. The more you can release force into the footwork posture, the more you can add rebound energy into the hit point that it's pushing back into the punch. Think again about these people who say, oh, you don't use pivot roots aren't useful in each one. It's absolutely essential for this concept of rebound energy to function at an advanced level. And again, listen carefully. Think about something like barge Yiquan, where you can really hear the set really clearly, and you can hear it here as well. A really clear, sharp set. This is exactly what you want. course, it does open up the whole structure, so that's part of the compromise, and there's always a compromise, but it's very useful as a building block. It's useful in itself, but it's useful as a building block if you then take a dynamic step after that. But I don't want to look at that straight away. Let's break it down a little bit, go back to our echo step, add a dynamic step with a simpler posture, and see how we can start stringing this together to keep our golden rooster stepping going along a chain of punches and combinations. So look carefully at this echo step variation. Lead foot steps forward, 1, 2, rear foot follows, lead foot steps out, and rear foot comes through. Look again. Lead foot, 1, 2 follows, lead foot again, and then rear foot steps through. Watch again. 1, 2, 3, 4. And again. 1, 2, lead foot again, rear foot steps straight through. Now that is quite knacky in itself, but we want to do something slightly different now, so we're going to widen out with a fan step. So watch, 1, 2, 3, 4. See, the lead foot widens out with a fan step. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's exactly the same apart from we finish with a fan step. Now, of course, this would be a whole lot easier if we were finishing with a lead hand punch. So stepping through 1, 2, and then finishing with a lead hand punch, but we're not. We're finishing with a cross, and this makes it very knacky, very difficult. And I want you to listen very carefully to the rhythm here, because we've gone past that point where counting in numbers is really useful, and we just want to think about the rhythm itself. And if you listen, you'll hear the rhythm is ba-dum bum bum bum, ba-dum bum bum bum, and that last one, that bum bum, ba-dum bum bum, that's where we do the split harmony. Ba-dum bum bum, split harmony, punch. Ba-dum bum bum bum. That's where it slingshots into the final beat. So one critical point we need to be aware of here is that the lead foot needs to land flat in order to support the step through. I mean, it would be very awkward, wouldn't it, if the lead foot was on a pivot route and then you tried to step through. That's not very comfortable. It's not supporting the leg, so it's got to land flat to support that, and you've got to practice that. You've got to drill it in with the echo step to land flat, and then using the rear foot to spring forwards into the fan step. And as you start to build strength with this, you start to speed it up and get more power. The infinite curriculum starts to tell you that this begins to merge with the technique for release force sideways in this way. Now we can start to fine tune a little bit and have a look at the timing of the posture. In particular, take a closer look at when the body turns into the rear punch. I'm exaggerating it there, but you've got to time it so that you don't do that too soon. It's got to slingshot from the step. And now let's have a look at the step itself. Because it's quite a big movement and that involves a lot of time and it's a little bit fussy, you can compound it much more by introducing that pull back on the step. That little drag back step that we've been using on the lead foot with all the other postures to just compound them a little bit. And then the whole movement has a kind of rhythm to it that you've got to feel as you drag back the foot, and then that slides into the lead foot, has that rhythm that we've looked at. So you can hear there, even when you do it slowly, you can feel that dim 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 dim, and then the punch is going to be afterwards, da dim da dim bum. So it has a rhythm to it. Even if you do it slowly, if you do it fast, it has that same rhythm. You can feel that intuitively. Next, let's think about the set, and this time pay attention to that rear foot. See there, the rear foot, see how it slams down onto the floor? It's got a very barge Yiquan feel to it. Look again. So the lead foot sets quite hard, and then the rear foot pushes, it slams down, releases force down into the floor to push into the next posture, and that gives it a very hard set. And remember, as we speed this up, it's somewhere between a split harmony and a distributed set. So it springs down into the floor, like Wang Xingzhai says, like a little landmine going off. It actually is part of a distributed set for the lead hand punch, but then it also explosively propels you forward into the next one.